And let's see this Tom Segura backlash.
All right, so Joe Rogan just did a podcast with Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, and Ari Shafir, the Sober October crew, and this episode was classic.
And this episode,
Bert Kreischer, he did what he does best and talked about himself a lot, kept interrupting. Joe got pissed at him a couple times, and he kept making everything about himself, which I think is just funny to watch because I like seeing Tom
he's a narcissist, of
and
course.
Joe have to deal with him. And also towards the end of the episode, I'm sure Joe wasn't happy about this, but Bert brought up how Tom's been getting negative comments. And of course, Joe just told him to stop reading them. And he said most of the people commenting
Okay, so just stop reading.
negative things
Lol.
are failures, which is ironic because that's kind of what caused Tom to start getting these comments by calling his fans losers and pores. So I don't know if Joe's really helping him here, and I don't know if this is the best advice, but we'll get to that later on. First, I want to start with the beginning. There are a couple
And
times
Joe Rogan just glazing them, I guess.
where Bert was trying to make things about himself, and you could tell they're trying their best to just ignore him and try not to acknowledge whatever he's saying. Like, they're talking about skiing and how dangerous tree wells are, and they pulled up a video of somebody falling into one. And of course, Bert is like, oh man, this is crazy. Yeah, it's happened to me a couple times. And he literally gets no response. Everyone just ignores him. And it's hilarious
Okay, the
because they probably all just know it's best to try to not give him attention and just move on. But he keeps bringing it up.
like to bring attention to himself
And he's
all the
like, oh, yeah,
time.
this happened to me. He says that like 3 or 4 times. And he also, before he says that, is like, yeah, if this happens,
Yeah, that's just kind of cringe.
done, you're dead. But apparently it's happened to him multiple times. And I think everybody could probably relate to being around somebody like Bert who always has to one up every story or everything you talk about
Yeah,
has
like Brendan Schaub.
happened to them in an even crazier way. And they're always trying to make every story about them. And you learn to just kind of ignore it after a while. But Bert, he is persistent, of course, and eventually he gets to tell his story. But it does take him a couple tries, and he has to say it happened to him like 4 times, and still nobody really acknowledges it. But he finally gets there. And it's funny because if this were anybody else on Joe's podcast, if they told a story about falling into a tree well and almost dying while skiing, Joe would definitely be intrigued by it and want to hear more about it. But when Bert mentions the story, it's like the exact opposite, and he doesn't even respond to it at all.
No, I've had
Dude.
a couple experiences like this.
He manages to stop himself.
Yeah.
Like,
What the
bro,
Okay, he's
how
just
the fuck do you
outward.
get out of that? How the f do you get out of that?
Right here, he's not flailing. He's
Yeah.
like putting his arm and his ski out to try
Uh-huh.
to so this guy was able to keep some composure as this was happening, which is like
bombed it.
kind of the craziest part.
Oh my god! So this is the snowboarder that's buried upside down. So this guy
No.
just sees that little
I'm
blue
reacting to this guy, reacting to this guy, and I think them reacting to this video. Nice.
piece,
Bro.
just
This
randomly.
happened to me.
Ski right over.
Yeah, he easily could have missed that.
Yeah, could have gone
Dude.
the other way.
There's not much blue.
Soft snow, he's in a tree well is what it is.
Yeah.
So the tree wells, it's really soft snow. So if you get
Yeah.
stuck in a tree well, you are fucking dead. A lot of people die in tree wells.
God damn.
Yeah, I'm thinking of getting one of those GPS things.
So when we went snowboarding in Matterhorn,
Yeah.
heli skiing, and the guy put a beacon on us. And the first thing he said, he puts a beacon, it's like 4 feet of powder. And he says, this is so we can find the body.
Whoa.
That feeling, this happened to me, that
Wow,
feeling
that's just
is
outward.
terrifying.
This guy's like, thank you.
Good. We'll get you out of here in a sec, okay?
The panic.
He knew he was
I
dead.
guess no one acknowledges him anymore.
Feeling panic watching
The
this.
panic. So what happens is, like what happened to me when we were heli skiing, is I fell face forward in powder. I'd never snowboarding in powder. 4 feet of powder is very different than snowboarding.
And he eventually gets to tell the story, but I love that nobody there really acknowledges him at all. You could tell he's just waiting for somebody to be like, whoa, this happened to you? That's crazy. But they all probably know that's what he's looking for, so they all just kind of ignore him. But that is classic Bert right there. You know exactly what you're
That's actually
gonna
hilarious.
get, and I don't think he's ever gonna change. Like at one point he was talking about how he wishes he could do AI for his podcast, and he wishes that they could just edit out the annoying parts of him, like him interrupting people. And Joe's like, well, how about you just not interrupt people? It's not that hard. But I guess Bert needs AI to do it for him. And then after that, Tom brings
Actually roasting him,
up
nice.
how whenever Bert meets a celebrity or anybody even remotely famous, he always fangirls out and he ends up making a fool out of himself. But it sounds like he does this because he's just excited to tell somebody famous about himself. Like he's just waiting to talk about himself, which they get into a little bit more later on when they talk about the time Bert met George R.R. Martin and didn't even listen to a word he said. And I'll play that clip after this.
If I could do my podcast with AI and then type in, yo, can you take all the
Yo.
annoying parts of me out
Yeah,
of it?
like he did with Adam Sandler. That's just
Like when I
cringe.
talk over you, or I talk like I would love.
How about
laugh.
just not talk over people?
Hey,
you
Joe,
don't need a
it's kinda
fucking
tough.
robot.
It's kind of tough.
You don't need a robot to do
I
it for
finally,
you.
I told you, so Bert has this thing where anybody with any level of celebrity, he geeks out
It
so
does.
hard
It's
on
so
it.
embarrassing.
Like a TikTok.
Oh, I love your
person.
stuff.
He's like, I'm the biggest fan. Oh my God, I saw the video. Oh my God, I'm the biggest fan. I love you so much. I saw the thing. And then he goes, and then he waits to tell them about him. He's like, he tells them his
Shut up.
resume.
Shut
But do you have imposter syndrome?
Of course. If you don't, I am curious why.
Didn't say I don't.
Okay, yeah, of course I have.
God.
Of
Why
course
is
I
it
have.
so aggressive?
No,
today?
because
Very aggressive, right after
Wasn't
imposter,
my answer was fairly calm.
no, but
right?
imposter syndrome
I was
is
just
kind
trying
of
to find out what he was feeling.
Yeah, so I think about one podcast a year is probably about all Joe can handle from Bert. He probably looks at Tom and is like, dude, how do you do a podcast every week with this guy? Even though that's not even what their podcast is anymore. Now it's just like one of them interviewing somebody else, probably because they need a break from each other. But it's hilarious because like right after this, right after Joe just got done telling Bert, why don't you work on trying to not talk over somebody? What does he do? He talks over Tom and interrupts him when he's telling a story. And then Joe has to give Bert the Brian Callen treatment and tells him to shut the F up. So this happens when Tom is trying to tell a story about when he met Snoop Dogg. And
Yeah,
he
what
said
happened with Brian Callen?
this was one of the few celebrities he was actually excited to meet.
He's got the best longevity of
And you know,
anybody.
And
You're
so
like,
I go,
okay.
I just admire that like so much. And then he said, he says everything cool.
Yeah.
Wait,
He
try to
goes-
guess. Try to guess what I'm
Shut the
thinking.
fuck up,
Hey,
Bert. Jesus
no,
Christ,
no, no,
Bert.
no,
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 let
no,
him
no,
talk.
He goes, let me get a flick with you. And I go,
You finally get the girl. Nice.
like I had
Oh.
that, let me
Gonna
get a
quickly
flick
do
with
it?
you. And I was like, yeah. So he asked for the photo.
And then also, like I said, right after the clip I played before this one, Bert was talking about how he met George R.R. Martin, you know, the guy that wrote Game of Thrones, and he took a picture with him, and obviously Bert was going crazy, thought it was so cool. But then afterwards, they're like, how cool is that we got to hear all this inside info about the series and all this behind-the-scenes stuff? But Bert, of course, wasn't paying attention at all, and the whole time he's just thinking, I can't wait to tell him about myself, which is crazy. You know, some people would die to talk to this guy. They love to ask him questions about the series and everything. And Bert, he basically just blacks out because all he wants to do is talk about himself.
Dude,
So-
I
but he
hung out
tells
with-
me,
I hung out with George R.R. Martin.
oh yeah. From
George R.R.
the
Martin.
How'd you
Game
meet
of
him at a buffet?
part is that Bert tells him, you know, how much
Shut
he loves
up.
the show.
Shut up.
And
Shut up.
then-
Just shut the
and then
fuck up,
George,
Tom. Tom, stop.
George reveals things about the show that like nobody knows. And then when they leave, Leanne's like, "Can you believe he told you all that?" And he's like, "Told us what?" He's like, "Well, he told you all like those insights, like secrets about Game of Thrones." And he's like, "What secrets?" And he's like, "I just wasn't listening because
Okay,
I wanted to talk."
He's like a cokehead.
no, that's very good, bro.
He was just waiting to talk.
He told me secrets about writing.
You just embrace this aspect of yourself. It seems you don't like it. It makes you angry when it comes out. You get upset at yourself, but yet you also embrace it.
Yeah.
It's so gross, though. It's so gross.
fascinating.
It's
It's
like
like
George
you're playing tic-tac-toe against yourself.
And it is kind of fascinating. You know, Bert's somebody where it's kind of funny, but also obviously at the same time, it's just really annoying and you can't be around him for too long. But you hear these stories and you're like, of course, this is what Bert is doing. This sounds exactly like him. You know, it's so predictable. Like also towards the end of the podcast, Bert asked Joe if anybody ever asks him what he does for a living. You know, like if they don't know who he is. And Joe's like, yeah, it happens. And he mentions a time where he talked to like Brett Weinstein's friend or something. And he asked Joe what he did for a living. And Joe's like, I actually don't mind it. I think it's kind of cool when somebody doesn't know who I am and they don't have this preconceived notion of me. And Bert, of course, is like, yeah, when somebody does that to me, I hate it. I can't stand it. If somebody asks what I do, I just shut down. Which again, sounds exactly like Bert. You know, he's probably just thinking, I'm the machine. How do you not know who I am?
Yeah.
Great.
Sometimes
He's
people
like, this
pretend
is
they don't know
real.
who you
Yeah.
are.
Okay, that's just way too much ego.
I've got friends that I've met that go, what do you do for a living? And I get fucking angry. And I go, how do you not know who I am? The dentist or whatever the guy lives next door to you.
Yeah.
So, what do you do for a living? And I'll fucking shut down.
No one knows that who he
This
is.
fancy lunch once with Eric Von
I
Daniken.
love it.
All right, so now let's get to the part where Bert mentions Tom's comments. It starts with Bert saying that it's so cool that Tom just doesn't care what people think. You know, he doesn't give an F. And Bert keeps saying that over and over again. He's like, I just think it's so cool. I'm jealous of you. But then Tom says, I do care about some things. And Joe responds and he's like, yeah, I think you give it the right amount of attention. You know, you're right in the middle. But Bert's like, no, he gives no Fs. Have you seen his comment section? And he's like, it's detrimental to his career. And he almost does a 180 because then he starts talking about how bad it is that Tom gives no Fs. He's like, man, if I read those comments, I would start to care. Even though Bert's comments are pretty similar. But I know he does get kind of annoyed with Tom about his whole Pores rant and everything, which is funny because he went on that rant, you know, the Pores rant about the airport and the Losers rant, you know, at his fans. He went on those rants responding to comments. So I think he might have been in a better position if he didn't read the comments and respond to them. But also, I don't think Joe's strategy is the best either, you know, to just never pay attention to them and have no idea what people are saying about you. Like, you shouldn't obsess over them and you shouldn't respond to them most of the time, but you should have a good idea of what the general sentiment towards you
Yeah, what does an idea of what they're
It's
saying?
funny. Bert claims he doesn't pay attention to his own comments, but he pays attention to Tom's. And it sounds like he probably wants Tom to kind of change a little bit and try to win some fans back. He also mentioned this on his own podcast one time.
We used to be good during the pandemic when Tom was fat, and then Tom lost weight and got disconnected from our fans.
Yeah.
It's just
Now calls them the pores.
He calls them the pores. He does call them the pores.
Yeah, so everybody keeps up with this stuff. You know, I'm sure, obviously, Joe Rogan, even though he doesn't read comments, I think he still has a good idea of what's going
I'm
on.
pretty sure he knows all the things, bro.
And Bert, he's also talked about previously how he misses old Tom. So even though right here he's saying it's cool that Tom doesn't care about anything, I mean, he switches up like right after that. He's like, I think he probably should care because he's losing some people here.
So I look up to you because it's the coolest thing about you is that you really don't give a fuck.
That is nice.
It's so cool to not give a fuck. It's so sexy. Like it's not, you know.
I think I give a fuck about certain
you
things.
don't give a fuck.
Yeah, right. But what you don't give a fuck about,
Tom,
I
I
don't
really
think
read
you
the
give a fuck
comments. You
about.
do not give a fuck. You do not give a fuck.
Yeah, sure. The Scorpion is insane.
You have the perfect amount of fucks.
I think it's like a balance.
No,
It's the right balance.
no, it's detrimental
To what?
to him.
How so?
Why?
If I read his comments, I'd be like, start giving a fuck.
Yeah, but who's writing those comments? You can't read comments.
I do.
The people that are writing them, you're getting a disproportionate amount of failures.
Or maybe Joe doesn't know what's going on with the situation, or he's just taking Tom's strategy because this is what put Tom in a situation where he's getting so many negative comments because he responded to them by calling them losers and poors. So this response from Joe probably isn't the best idea. And it's funny that Joe's like, you can't read those. Who's leaving those comments? Tom's fans. So maybe he should listen to them. And he definitely is. You know, I think Bert is wrong here because like I talked about a couple weeks ago, when Tom was on Bobby Kelly's podcast, he's clearly trying to take it easy on the rich guy talk. You know, Bobby asked him how many cars he had and he did not want to respond to it.
What kind of car you have?
Which one?
You have cars?
Yeah, I
How many
like
cars
cars.
you got?
This is actual goal.
You alright?
I think.
You know what, Tommy?
No, I don't know.
And before that, Tom's always been like, I'm going to talk about whatever I want. I don't care what any of my poor loser fans think. If you don't like it, then just don't listen. So he is starting to change a
I
little
mean, these people are saving
bit,
him.
but
So
I guess Bert doesn't think it's enough. And then Joe's telling him to just completely ignore the comments, which I don't know if that's a good idea either, because it is good to get some feedback. And Joe's justification to why Tom shouldn't read comments is hilarious. He starts talking about how comments aren't a proper control study, and you need to take every age and every range of person into consideration and all this stuff. And it just sounds ridiculous. I mean, I understand comments don't mean everything. You know, there's a lot of people
you
that
want a case study on comments?
listen to Tom's podcast and have no idea what's going on, like don't know anything about his rants or anything and how that blew up in his face. So obviously it's true that comments don't represent your whole fan base, and there are going to be trolls too that comment and don't even like you to begin with and are just trying to get a rise out of you. But to say you shouldn't pay attention at all and use this as the justification
this
just
is
sounds
dumb.
ridiculous.
You're getting a disproportionate amount of failures. You're getting a disproportionate amount of
There's a lot
people
of
that
positive
are
ones.
just, yeah, for sure. But it's
Fun to
not,
read.
it's not, if you're trying to get like a control study of the population, general population, if you're doing a
commenters.
pharmaceutical study, you have a bunch of old people, a bunch of young people, different walks of life. You're going to do it right. You do it with a bunch of biological variability. The variability of people that are wanting to comment negatively online is like,
Ugh.
you can find those people. They don't have their shit together.
That's
They're
the
a
people with
mess.
dizziness.
Some of them are kids.
Just ignore them.
Yeah.
A lot of them are
Look at the
kids.
positive ones.
They're real young. Some of them, they think it's fun. They're trying to get a reaction. They don't know what to do. They just try to like shit on you and see if you respond. It's a nonsense way to communicate.
Yeah, so I don't know if Joe is just talking about comments here or he's talking about all the videos about his friends, because it has become almost a whole genre on YouTube talking shit about the whole Joe Rogan sphere of comedians. And even though he doesn't pay attention to comments or read stuff about himself or his friends, it's almost hard to avoid it at this point on YouTube. You know, there's so many videos about Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura and Andrew Schultz and, you know, all those people. So I'm sure Joe has seen them pop up. Like, he's obviously aware of all the negative criticism Tom's been getting.
And
And I'm sure
obviously,
some comments and maybe videos want to just get a reaction out of Tom and want to get him to respond. That's never really been my goal. You know, I think it is funny when people respond. You know, like when Brian Callen mentioned how his mom saw one of my videos and started crying from it. I thought that was hilarious. But it's not really my goal with these videos to try to provoke people. You know, I'm just trying to make entertaining stuff that people enjoy. And I don't care if I get a reaction out of these comedians or they respond to it or address it. That's not what I'm going for. But like I said, it is kind of funny when it happens. And it sounds like they even agree that it is fun to provoke people. I mean, that's basically Ari Shafir's career, you know, just trying to say controversial stuff and get people all riled up and get a rise out of people.
And it's
Everyone
also
else thinks
fun.
they're
Don't you think it's fun sometimes just
yeah, that drugging is not fun.
Yeah, it is.
Me, not me, not
Yeah.
me.
It's just straight up illegal.
Definitely you are.
Yeah, it's fun.
yeah, you're number one at that.
It's
You
fun.
love it.
Just to provoke. Just like,
Yeah.
let me get a rise out of
Yeah,
you.
it's a fun way to initiate a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not me. I cruise by. Try to keep my head down.
Read those comments, huh?
Yes, you
What?
do. You just said you did.
No. I read Tommy's comments. I read Tommy's comments.
You don't read yours?
No, I do not.
Ever. Not ever?
Never.
Every now and then.
Never.
Late at night, taking a shit, 3 in the morning.
Never.
So,
Open up
Never
that
read
phone.
yours?
I
There
never.
is no sort hidden
I
there.
Pretty
hired
happy about this
Victoria
post.
so that I
Let
could.
me see if it's positive. Let me see if people have a
You-
good
do you
thing
read
to
it all?
say. No,
So wait, why would you believe I didn't?
because I'm different than you.
How so?
Don't you think?
Nope.
You don't think you think we're the same?
I think we're so similar.
That's fascinating.
And then Bert tries to argue that they're very similar. And it's just funny that he's saying he doesn't read his own comments, but he reads Tom's. I mean, just reading Tom's, I'm sure he'll see a lot of negative comments about himself. But it sounds like he takes the Brendan Schaub approach now, and he has some people that monitor his comments. And Bobby Lee did mention when he went over to do his podcast recently, he had like a team of 8 people sitting at computers, and I think probably all of them are just monitoring comments at this point. So that's about it for this video. Make sure you guys go check out my Patreon account if you like this kind of content.
Yes, I would ending there. That's pretty cool video.